Good morning, Stuart. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time today for me. I mean, it's it's a true pleasure for me. Um, just to give you a little bit of the reason I contacted you and I wanted to have that second conversation with you on my podcast. I think I told you, but I'm built like this. I was really, I'm always really looking forward to have a conversation with the people I work with, and especially to understand more about the person behind the coach. For you, it's behind the life coach and the business coach. But yeah, but your personal take, your personality, your background, but also your childhood, your hobbies, the country you live in, beautiful South Africa that I don't know yet. So that are the main reasons I contacted you today. But obviously, as you know, the goal is to have a fluid and raw conversation. So make yourself comfortable and please welcome to the show.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Antoine. It's actually it's an honor to come onto your particular podcast for the second time and to go through this. And it's great to start looking at people in their personal capacity. You know, as a coach, I spend my time unraveling the layers, if you think of an onion, to try and get down to that solid core. And so much of the people that I coach have always got lots and lots of layers on that's hiding themselves from the outside world. So to break it all the way down to that rare core and that rare center is absolutely amazing. And I want to thank you for the opportunity for bringing me on, because it's not often that as a coach, I get to sit on the other side of the conversation and actually, you know, give a little bit of an insight of who I am as a person and why I do it. Because I think that's one of the biggest reasons when I'm having coachings with people is when people ask me the question, Stuart, why do you coach? And, you know, I can give multiple reasons, but when you start taking it all the way back to that little core, that little center inside of me as an individual, then you get to understand why coaches become coaches. You know, there's a lot of word out there that coaches become coaches because of personal experiences. They went through some rough times and they have got that personal experience that they're able to relay onto people. Now, fortunately for me, my upbringing here in South Africa was a great upbringing. Mom, dad, very true to the support of me growing up. I have a sister as well that's 6 years younger than me. And they were very much of an influencer in my life. My dad has been a person that's been an entrepreneur. He goes out and at times he was running 3-4 different businesses at the same time. But when I looked at his businesses, they all had the same elements attached to it. So to give you an example, he was in power electronics, but one of his sidelines was he used to lecture people in electronics. So it kind of had this balance that was going through. So from a very, very young age, I've always had it that education and knowledge was absolutely paramount and key. If you wanted to be successful in life, it needed to be supported by education knowledge. And that I got directly from him. So I used to do that from a very, very young age. In fact, the first time that I ever did a training program, and this is a training program that I wrote the training program, it was in 1997. I wrote the program myself. It was a 10-week program. And if you think back, 1997, a long time ago, but it was before the change of the millennium. And it was all about upgrading and repairing of PCs. That was the very first training program. I wrote it and I presented. I had just under 20 people in the actual class that I was attending. I was 21 years old, okay? And when you're 21, you've written your first program and people are paying you for it. I suddenly got this feeling that was inspiration. I'm sharing knowledge and helping people through this particular journey. And that's when this whole personal career really kicked into gear when I could see that if I gave you a little bit of knowledge that empowered you to do something that changed not only your life, but your family's life and the people around you, it just started to inspire me. And I started to grow and I started to build on that like you cannot believe. And that actually is where it all originated from. So from these little grassroots in a little town called Durban in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, where I grew up. It is a surfing town. So Antoine, I know that you're a surfer. Back in the days, we used to have the Gunston 500, and that was an international, was a world surfing contest. Surfers around the world came in, and that's where I grew up. You know, dropped off on the beach from Friday afternoon and get picked up on Sunday afternoon, and really live the weekend on the beach. I mean, that was you got that salt air, that breath of fresh air that comes. I'm sure you know what that's all about. All about that. And that's really where I started to build a passion, helping people, seeing people. You know, I still remember days of sitting on the beach and watching people pick up a surfboard for the first time, jump into the ocean, not know how to surf, falling off. And I'm sure you've seen these people smashing their head on the board going one way, they're going the other way, the wave churning them all over the place. But they just got up and they did it again. And then you notice the surfers, and that was the culture of the Durban coastline. They would come up and they would start talking to them and say, hey, you should do this, and watch how this culture comes here. And that's something that's very big in South Africa, is our culture of wanting to help people. So when I started to tie that culture with what I'd experienced and seen from my father, and then I actually in 97 started to implement it, it was like a fire inside of me. It just started to burn and burn and burn and get bigger and bigger. And until it's where I am, right now, speaking to people across the world, coaching and helping them to get them to break back those onion peels, get to that raw core, and then find out what is it that they need to know, what is it that they need to learn to help them to go forward, to help them with their personal life, the people around them, their family. That's that knock-on effect that we have as a coach. So when I take it down to that raw core, it's a person that wants to give. It's a person that just wants to see how I can help you. And the way I do that is with coaching. Now, I do talk about the Durban and the surf. Did I ever surf? Well, I was one of those guys and I still remember first day getting on the board and knocking myself out. Why? I'd never heard of a thing called wax, to wax the board so that it doesn't get slippery. And I still remember going out there, I didn't wax the board. My foot came off, hit my head on that board, knocked myself out. Fortunately, it's in the shallows, and I must have been out for probably a couple of seconds because everything went black. And from there, I had this heart to heart. That surfboard was a dangerous weapon. And I left that to all my mates to go and surf. And I used to body surf next to them, swimming out to back lines and doing that type of thing. Surfing for me, I had two left feet and they were going the wrong direction. But coming from a culture, an environment where surfing is what we brought up with, especially on the east coast of South Africa, it really gave us things. So for me, surfing was more about the ocean, about listening and relaxing, that meditation, hearing the ocean coming in. And that also started to come into my personal life as well. When I started looking at the meditation sides of it, when I look at my hobbies of what I do now, I find areas where it's quiet. And we all know South Africa is a country with the big five, nature reserves, Kruger National Park, Pilanesberg, all these great environments where you're going out to nature. And this is something where I think it's absolutely amazing. did you know when you look at animals, they're in their rawest form? They don't put on covers. You don't see a lion dressing up like a sheep to walk into, to go and catch a sheep to go and get some dinner, or dressing up like a kudu. They are who they are. So when I'm going out into nature, I'm seeing nature in its rawest. And what that does, it actually helps me to internalize, to bring me back to my true self. And that I think back to when you sit and you listen to the ocean. You know, you hear those waves coming in and out. It's a meditation. That's a meditation for your ears. Out in nature, it's the meditation for my eyes and as well as the other senses. When you see nature, when you're actually just seeing a rhino just walking through and eating, when you're seeing an elephant scratching itself against a tree, when you're seeing a lion on the side of the road and it's just yawning and taking a sleep, that's them in their rawest form. And that's when you start to realize, hey, we are part of this animal kingdom, and being part of that, it actually brings you back to nature and brings you back to this true self. So one of my biggest hobbies out there is going out. And I actually now, I've invested in a good quality camera, and I actually take pictures of nature as memories to when I come back and I go, my gosh, just have a look at this particular giraffe and its baby. You know, just having a look at its first walks. That was something that we saw when we saw a giraffe give birth. You know, you see these things and you know that this is nature, and this is what brings us all back. So a big part of me is just getting into that whole nature, whether it's the ocean, whether it's in the actual bush, just relaxing, because that there is bringing me back to my raw self and actually bringing us back to who we should be as individuals. You know, hustle bustle of life is the hustle bustle of life, and you can get so wrapped into it that you start becoming somebody else. Why? Because you've got this internal goal and dream of being somebody else. You know, social media, whether it's on Netflix, we see a video or we see a series and we want to live like that person. So what do? We start dressing like them. We start doing the activities like them. We start doing things like them. And we lose who we are as individuals. And we get lost. So my coaching throughout the years is to get people back to the rawness, get them back to that center core, and then allow them to go on a journey that they create. That is actually so, so important. So I've got a question for yourself, Antoine. I know that you are a surfing phenomenal. You know, surfing, and in our coaching sessions, we've gone through this on an ongoing basis. Why have you never taken a trip to South Africa to surf our waves? Why has that never been an option for you?
It is an option, actually. But yeah, I don't know, actually. It wasn't really my top one priority. But I've been to Costa Rica quite a long time ago. I've been living in Sydney, in North Sydney, in Manly, which is a really, really nice area in between Sydney, the Sydney centre, the harbour, and the nature. Been living there for about a year, just after my high school, in between my 19s and my 20s. I've been to Indonesia, obviously, and to most places, surf places in Europe. But yeah, I've always thought about South Africa, but I don't know, the safety, the wilderness, also the waves. Yeah, I don't have a really clear answer to you, but it is on my list, and I think it moves up on my list now for quite a bit of time. But I don't know. I mean, to be honest, it scares me a little bit. I've got some friends who went there and to spend quite some time there, and they told me that you get used to it, to the sharks, the wilderness, and the rawness to the places and the spots. Yeah, they told me it's fine, but it's quite scary for some surfers like me that that don't surf in big, huge wilderness or nature. Yeah, I've seen tons of footages from J-Bays and big spots like this. But yeah, the sharks, the nature, it's quite scary, and also the waves are big. The waves get big, so I'm not a really big wave surfer. I get really easily scared because I have so much imagination, and that can place some tricky things into my mind. But yeah, it's definitely on my list, and I think I'm more open to the to a surf trip to do a surf trip to South Africa, but mixing it up with maybe a safari or just exploring the wild. I'm not really. I mean, I haven't really been attracted. I mean, just according to what I know, I obviously don't know much about that, but the cities and the towns, obviously with the safety issue that we all heard of, but I don't even know if it's still true or if it's a myth. But I haven't really been inspired to do that surf trip mixed with a city trip like I did in Los Angeles a few weeks ago. So no, yeah, that would be the reasons. I don't know, but I will definitely do it. Yeah, I would really love to. A couple of weeks ago, it was the J Bay Open, that part of the world tour, and the waves are. I mean, even on pictures, it gets me. I mean, it is crazy. So yeah, that I think going to Pipeline in Hawaii, in Oahu, for the last event of the world tour, which is now in the beginning of the schedule, but that's the biggest event, obviously. Maybe in
Yep.
Tahiti, there's a big wave also that you can see only from a boat into the channel, so that would be amazing. There's actually the Olympics because it's a French islands, so the Paris Olympics will be. I mean, the surf will be there. So that will be two destinations I would love to go just for. I mean, mainly for surf, and then obviously for the nature around it, because French Polynesian and Hawaii must be pretty incredible for the nature as well. And then South Africa. I mean, I would really love. I think the J Bay little town or village. I don't really know how big it, but I think it suits me pretty well. Not a really huge city like in Los Angeles or other
Yeah.
cities like this or like Paris, but just to get that surf town, surf vibe, and then the view with the waves, it's amazing. I mean, I just want to surf them, but even maybe a bit more just to watch them and experience it.
Absolutely. You know, it's so great. And I hear this from so many people when they talk about South Africa, you know, especially going out into the ocean, sharks, coming
Yeah,
out into the cities, safety and crime. And, you know, I've stayed in South Africa all my life. I've had the opportunity to travel to a few countries around the world. And the most amazing thing is when I look at our cities and I look at cities like London, Montreal, they actually look the same. In fact, the only thing that's different is people have an accent. When I look at the cities look exactly the same. When we look at crime, you know, crime in South Africa is, yes, there is crime. We have levels of poverty and unemployment, but we have that across the world. Maybe it's in isolated areas. But one thing that I have picked up in South Africa is when you're going in South Africa, the culture and the warmth of the people is far greater than the crime. We have this where eyes are always on South Africa, you know, following apartheid. When South Africa transformed in 1994 under Nelson Mandela and through the ANC, there was a big change in South Africa. There was uncertainty in South Africa. People didn't know what was going to go. But the true honest of it is things actually almost got a lot better. You know, when we start looking at things that we were allowed to do, because prior to that, you know, we were kind of just locked up, if you want to call it. We couldn't have it. We had all these restrictions with South Africa. It's given us a greater opportunity. And that opportunity has allowed us to share the country with people. So crime, yes, there's crime all over the world. In South Africa, do we have? Yes, we do have crime. Where I stay in the little town, I sleep most of the times, our windows are open. I don't have my car locked. You know, we've geared ourselves towards handling crime. And when you start falling into that, people from the outside world will have a look at it and say, hey, you've got these high walls around your property, looks like a prison. Well, what we've done is we've changed that and said, well, we've got high walls. Now we've got dogs and they can remain inside there so they don't run up and down the street. And we've taken our gardens and we've made them into our personal areas. Not so much from a crime point of view, but now you'll see a lot of people's gardens take a lot of pride in it, and they're keeping all those inside. So crime is definitely something that everybody's got to be aware of. Doesn't matter where you're going in the world, but you've still got this beautiful nature. And sharks is something that is so funny. Now, did you know that if you, especially along the East Coast, now I'm talking about Durban specifically, which is one area, they have shark nets. And these shark nets run literally that whole coastline. There's the sharks board that go out every single day to check the shark nets, because there's a lot of people say, oh, but you're gonna harm the sharks because they're gonna get cut. No, they're actually there to help. So if a shark does get entangled, they release them if they're able to. Those shark nets are there to protect those coastal lines. Now, those shark nets, they do raise them when we have what we call the sardine run. And the sardine run is where we have this massive sardines that come up the coast. Then you see sharks in the plentiful, and I'd recommend you do not surf in those times. Strongly recommend it, because the sharks are out in full force. But for the rest of the time, the great thing about the east coast of South Africa is we have warm waters. So with warm waters comes these great waves. It comes with consistency of waves as well. So for surfers, when you start looking at sets, your sets are almost clean. You can see a swell. You know that there's going to be a good wave that will actually follow it. And they have these like breaks in between. When you start hitting west coasts, you do find the waves get much bigger, but it becomes choppier. A lot of wind that flows, and it's very unpredictable. Plus, the waters are cold, really, really cold. So when you actually start looking at Jeffreys Bay, J Bay, it's a small town. And in fact, Antoine, you would love the town. In fact, I think if you had to go there, you probably wouldn't leave, because it is a town, it's a community that it just embraces everybody. And when the J Bay contest comes up, you know, you can see how the community comes together. They have massive waves. Yes, it is south of South Africa, so it is getting closer to where we have the two oceans meeting each other, which means the waters are colder. In the colder waters, yes, you do get those big sharks. But I can tell you now, if you look over the years, the amount of shark attacks compared to, I mean, you said Australia, it's a lot less because they are more aware of it. And with those contests, they do have a look and they are aware of all those sharks. But when you start going up the coast, closer to Durban, you will find the amount of sharks out there. The sharks, there are the bull shark, they're out there, the tiger shark, but they're not so much in the swimming areas. They're not in those particular surfing areas. And yeah, you still got to be aware of them. I mean, remember, it's their domain. It's not yours. But they're the shark nets that are up there. You know, they take those precautions. And if there is a big shark, trust me, those lifeguards are on those binoculars all the time, looking out to make sure of the safety of surfers. And when you're talking about big waves, this is a great thing about it, because I used to body surf in a lot of those waves. You're looking at waves from about 3-foot small waves up to about 5 foot. That's your comfortable. When you start hitting those summer times where we get those swells coming through, then you're starting to look from about 5 foot on a small wave hitting up to about 8-9 foot type of waves. And when you start getting up to double digits, like 10 foot, that can get a little bit kind of scary, but the adrenaline goes out, and that's what the rush is. That's why surfers go out there. So it's been a huge journey. And as I said, for me, surfing, I just had one bad experience, and it was more of a joke of friends. You got to put that wax on. So that was one of my big things. And I'm goofy footed. So when I do a skateboard, I'm the other way around. So you can imagine surfers going down a wave, they're all going this way and Stuart's going this way. And you kind of get this bit of a clash. I just remain to good old fashioned body surfing. That's really what I used to enjoy.
That's very good. And I was wondering, how about look up? I've heard so many good things about the vibe and the culture there, surf culture. I mean, have you been there, or is it completely different where you live? Or
yeah. So personally, I haven't been there. I've had a few of the coastal regions that I have gone through there. I haven't personally been there, so I can only comment from speculation. But most of the time, it's what you're going to see on social media. People are talking about it, saying, "Hey, this was a great place to go through to." So yeah, I've kept my coastal regions on the surfing to limits, but most of the time, I enjoy those waves. That natural, and I'm sure you've had it. Early morning sunrises, because it's on the East Coast. When you watch a sunrise, the ocean speaks to you, and you'll only experience it if you've sat there at like between 3:30 and 4:30 in the morning. The waves and the ocean is almost like glass at times, but the ocean speaks to you in a very, very unique way. And I know most people that are going to be watching this and go, "My God, this guy must be on something." But only the people that have experienced it will know exactly what I'm talking about. And it just gives us calming elements. And that is something extremely powerful for everybody. And you actually, the sad thing is, people only experience it through recordings, because you'll actually listen to it when you download it. If you want some kind of calming music and you're listening to the ocean, you're only hearing it on the audio. When you've actually experienced it, when you see it, you can taste the salt in your mouth. You can smell that breeze coming over. You can feel the temperature, how it changes. And you just hear it and feel it. Blows your mind. It's the same as actually going out into the bush and you're just sitting there, just watching, as I said, a rhino just eating the grass and walking past your car. An elephant scratching itself up against a tree. It's that rawness that actually reminds you of where we actually should be in our lives. And that's an amazing journey.
Do you go often for weekends and stuff into the bush or into the
Absolutely. So we try to go with my family. I've got 3 kids. I've got a daughter who actually now lives and works in a nature reserve. So she wakes up in the middle of the bush. So you can imagine we've instilled that onto herself. So we go at least once a month. We will take a trip. It's about an hour and a half's drive from where I stay. And we'll go and drive into the bush and just go and enjoy nature. Drive around to try and find a kudu. Go and find a buck. Go and find some animal out there. And obviously the big 5, that's one of the big ones out there. It was about 2-3 weeks ago. I went with my wife. We celebrated our anniversary. And we went to a place that has the big 5. And in a matter of 4 hours, we got to see 4 of the big 5. The lion, the rhino, the elephant, the buffalo. The only one that we didn't get to see is the leopard. And the reason for that, the leopards are always, they're up in a tree, out in the bush, they come out at night. But in 4 hours, we got to experience nature in an absolute raw setting. And, when you come back from an experience like that, it gives you a true appreciation of why we live in South Africa. We have this on our doorstep, and it was an hour and 20 minutes drive away. to experience that. And as I said, we do that once a month. In about 2 weekends' time, I'm going again into the bush for my September trip. And we'll spend 2 nights in the middle of the bush where cell phone signals, technology kind of just shuts down. You know, you're hearing nature, you're hearing the crickets, you are waking up to just that scent of nature, the stars. And I must admit, when you look up in the sky looks different. Its stars are clear. The sky is so blue, it's unbelievable. And that's a reset. And that's an internalization that we do on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, that must be very refreshing for your mind. And yeah.
Absolutely is. Absolutely is. And you actually come back with a new level of inspiration.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not only just to share the experience, but it's you're actually coming back and going, man, I can help more people. You know, just uncover a couple more of those onion layers, get down to that raw core, and then make that core as big as possible so that you can inspire the people around you, change the lives of the people around you, and watch what it does for you. It's amazing. And the great thing about this, I don't do this for any recognition. I do this because it helps people. I do this because I know that by just that one conversation, their life could change. And that becomes that purpose inside of me. And I could go on for hours talking about how to change people's lives and coaching. But that is the absolute rawness. It's taking people down to that core.
I see. So why haven't you, I mean, why the coaching? Why haven't you, I was wondering when you were talking, why not teaching, for example, at high school or even in elementary schools, I don't know, or even, I mean, I had a thought, and why not nursery school or medicine school, or why particularly the coaching, and why not having studied a psychological education? What did you? Yeah, what put you on that track, if I may say it like this?
Absolutely. So when it comes to the youngins, the youngsters, I leave that to my wife. She's a school teacher. In fact, I refer to her as the child whisperer, because she can go up to any child, young child, and I'm talking probably from the age of 3 up to the age of 12. Doesn't matter what language they speak, she can communicate with them. She has got this unbelievable internal ability to have those conversations. So I leave that to her. She helps people and young kids. And we actually work together when we're talking about it in the evenings and in the mornings. And that's a big part of it. For me, what I got to realize is when I'm helping young adults, and I'm talking adults from about the ages 17 up to about 21, and I do a session to action, I do trainings as well, I go through and I help them to try and find purpose, to find clarity in their life, because they're coming out of school, their eyes are like this, and they're looking at life going, what now? And all they've got is they've got people around them saying, oh, you must study and become a doctor. You must study and become an accountant. But they actually don't know what they want. So I do training sessions with them, young adults, to help them to find themselves so that they can take those steps forward. And what I got to realize is with my business background, and I've been doing business now 25 years of helping companies grow. And in the beginning, it was all about helping companies become profitable. And over time, I got to realize when a company becomes profitable, they're actually employing staff, which means that that company is giving a life, a future to those employees. And with those employees, I work with the company to actually do training programs with the employees so that they can then start helping their families. And this is where this knock-on effect. So when I was looking at how do I make the greatest impact with my history, it's helping entrepreneurs, helping the SMEs, the small, medium enterprises, grow their businesses. And it's not just about the money. That's where I started. It's actually about how do I take that company to get into profits? How do I get it once they're into profits to ensure that they have this culture within their staff? Then once they've got the culture within their staff, they're actually taking this forward, which helps the company, but more importantly, helps their family. And they start to grow their family. And it's through that that I have this indirect connection to the youth, because we all look up to our parents. And if our parents are lost, we become lost. It becomes very challenging to find your ways. So I realized, looking back at my youth, I had my father who knew exactly where he was going. He was brilliant at business. He was training, he was educating, getting people to grow to a new level. And that gave me that lighthouse that I could say, hey, if I make sure that I can get young adults as well as senior adults to understand their purpose, get them to that basic core so that they can give the guidance down, we're going to have a generational growth. And that's why a lot of my focus is on business owners, those entrepreneurs through to the SMEs, because I know that by changing their life, their vision, and getting to understand their purpose and their why of being in business, they will pass that on to their employees. They'll also pass on to their family. And it's their employees that we then grow and we develop. And they then actually start to filter out. And that's why a lot of my focus goes onto that, because I want to create those lights so that the youth that are coming up, they've got that guidance. They know where to go. They have that internal, all right, I've got direction. So that's one of the reasons why I do that, is to assist people so that it becomes this generational kind of education that I want to pass on.
Yeah, that's very, I mean, it's so powerful. I mean, I fully understand, and I can put more depth now into your personality behind all the work we've done together. Now, that's truly inspiring. Thank you for that, and I really see what you mean. But yeah, I was wondering when we were talking, will you have besides the One Thing book? It could be a business book, or even a personal or mindset book, or whatever. But would you have a book to recommend around that purpose thing, that key thing around all your coaching and your involvement into the helping other people to find their purpose and to find a direction in their life? I think of many different directions, but will you have something, I mean, a piece of knowledge to share or to recommend to me or to other people, just to get more inspirations from that?
Absolutely. Yes. So I'm a coach and trainer with the One Thing, and I read the One Thing, and I really internalized that and understand the processes that went through. There's a lot of authors out there that give you that level of inspiration. But there was a book, and it's so funny that you brought this up, because there's a book, and it was probably about 2 years ago. I've got this habit when I go into a bookshop that I'm a bit of a bookaholic. I'll buy 2 or 3 books that have interest, and I will go through it. And I went to one of our local bookshops, and they had a bargain bin. And inside this bargain bin, it's a mixture. When I'm saying mixture of books, there's from comics to love stories to you name it. It was a marked down bin. And I happened to pick up this book. And it really, I picked it up because it was small, it was cheap. I mean, bargain bins are always cheap, but there was a reason why it was sitting on top. And the book was called The Why Are You Here Cafe. So the book is called The Why Are You Here Cafe. It's a book that was written by a guy by the name of John P. Strelecki. I think I got that right. So John P. Strelecki, he wrote this book, and it is such a powerful book. It's such an easy read. So even if a person is not a big reader, it's only about 130 pages. And I'm not getting any kind of kickback on this, but I just remember this off the top of my head because it's even a book that I gave to my daughters to read. And it's a book about a sale, and it's a metaphor. So it's a book that has a parallel meaning to it. It's about a salesman that was traveling on a long journey. He goes down a road, he's running out of petrol, he's getting hungry, it's getting dark, he needs to find a place to stay, and he comes across the only cafe that's open. And he goes in, and it's the questions that the waitress asks him. It's the questions that the owner asks him. And it actually falls in line, the why are you here cafe. And if you just take the prefix and suffix out, the and the cafe, why are you here? And when you go through this, at the end of the book, you're going to start to ask yourself, and I'm going to say positive questions, not negative. You're going to start to see different things. It is an extremely powerful, extremely easy book. And with a lot of my coaching clients, I've actually brought it up and I've shared it with them to say, read this book, 130 pages. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on the Kindle. You can download the ebooks. You can get the book itself. I'm a good old fashioned. I like to read and feel the papers in my hands, get that smell of a book inside. But the Why Are You Here Cafe is a book that will take you probably 2 or 3 days to read, even if you're not a big reader. But at the end of it, you're going to sit there. One, you're going to feel hungry. That's for sure, because there's a lot of food that gets served and lots of food. So you're going to be hungry afterwards. But you're also going to be hungry to find out why you're here and what you do. What is the purpose of what you do every single morning? And such a powerful, powerful book that was written. So that would definitely be something that I would recommend as a read for anybody that's listening and watching to this. So it's The Why Are You Here Cafe by John P. Strelecki.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have a look at it. When you were talking, I was again wondering that just about more about a light question or productivity tip, but that's one thing that I'm thinking a lot of at the moment. But because I read so many books, and most of the time I don't finish them, except very, very, very key best ones. And some of them, and that's a very strong argument for me for the book. Some of them I can read them twice or 3 times or 4 times, but that's the very best. But the most of the time, I would say 9 to 10, I wouldn't even finish them, not even going through all the chapters. It depends a little bit on the topics and stuff. But and I've said to myself, that's still something that it is a little bit unclear, but I think I am about to set myself the goal or the task to choose a little bit more wisely and to finish every book that I start. But I still struggle a little bit because I'm in between 2 thoughts. On one way, I think there is a huge benefit to start many, many, many books and getting inspired by them, and don't lose too much time finishing them, because most of them are pretty repetitive. It depends, but so there is really an advantage, a benefit to starting many books without finishing them. But on a personal level, and I would even say on a mindset level, but to feel, satisfied about yourself and to really gain knowledge. But it's even beyond knowledge. It's more about yourself, finishing what you start. And you can relate to this. And it's really, really strongly linked to what we've talked this morning during our coaching session. But that's also something really powerful. So I just wanted to ask you, do you read many books in parallel, or do you finish all of them, or do you make some really, really strong productivity advice to yourself before starting them, or how do you manage all those knowledge and information?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you asked that, because I follow the principles of the one thing, which means one book at a time. I used to be very similar to yourself. I would read the first chapter of this book, and then I would go into the first chapter of this book, and then I would put this book down and then pick up another book, and ultimately not finish all the books. So I got into the habit of, if I start a book, I must finish the book. And one of the big reasons why people, when they start reading a book, they don't finish it, is they didn't have any particular purpose for reading it. It was just because they wanted to read something. And you could pick up a newspaper and you could read a newspaper and you'd feel satisfied. So when I start selecting books now, what I typically do is, covers are always the most interesting because that's what gets you to pick the book up. But I always read the foreword inside of a book, because that gives us the purpose, the why the author wrote the book. And sometimes those forewords are written by somebody else, and they are linking them together. And you can actually understand this, the reason why they wrote the book. When you can actually relate to it, there's a high chance that you're going to finish the book. If you read those forewords and you go, what's this guy talking about? The chances of you finishing the book is going to be quite slim. Or you're going to do what we call skimp read. Where you read the first word, the last word, the bottom last word, and then you change the page. Because our subconscious can actually read the whole page in almost like an instant. And we can just page through it. But when I start reading that forward, and I see this, I want to understand the reason why. And with this particular book, The Why Cafe, it actually, the forward was like, wow, I want to understand the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing in my life. I want to understand the reasons why I go to a certain destination, why I meet with a certain person. What was the purpose behind that? Because as soon as I start having that purpose, suddenly I can see, is that in alignment to achieving my goals? Yes or no? If it's not, well, I move off. If it is, well, then I'm committed. And that's what happens when I look at the book. Suddenly I go, hey, this is an alignment for me to achieve my goals. I'm committed. And then I'll sit down and I will read the book. Now, I'm not a big reader in the sense I can't read 130 pages right off the bat. I will read maybe 5 to 10 pages a day. So what I would typically do, and this is a suggestion that I can have with people, when you read the beginning, the forward, and you get that the reason, the purpose behind it. And by the way, this also falls into your non-fiction, fiction books as well. There's a purpose behind wanting to get more information. When that actually relates to you, it steps it up a notch. Have a look at how many pages in the book. So this particular book is 130 pages. Now, I go through an average of, as I said, between 5 and 10 pages a day if I'm going to read, which means I'm going to take probably between 13 to 26 days to read that book. So I break it down, and this is just using the principles of the one thing. I've got a big task, read a book, 130 pages. Well, let me make it into smaller tasks. Let me read 5 to 10 pages. And I'm going to do that for 5 days a week or 7 days a week, depends on how my diary goes into it. So I know that it will take me between 13 to 26 days to read that book. And that's how I break it down in a logical fashion. there are books that I can read and it just gets so engrossed, which means I might read it twice in a day. I'll do a morning and then before bed I'll read, which means I'll finish it earlier. But the reason why I share that is when you get a book and you can relate to it, set yourself a deadline. Set yourself to say, right, today is the 11th of September. I want to read this book by the 30th of September. I want it done and dusted. And you set yourself that timeline. That's when I'm going to go actually read it by. And what will happen is you will actually now have a purpose. You understand the reason behind it. You've got a timeline and you will actually read that book. And you'll actually find you'll actually finish it way before that timeline. But don't set yourself 130 pages in 2 days if you're not a big reader.
Yeah,
so
man. Yeah, no, excuse me to interrupt, but that's so powerful. I fully understand what you mean, and I'm just starting into. I mean, I'm just getting warmed up a little bit into this one thing principles, but I can really see throughout your personal life as well how deep you can tap into it. That's very interesting, and how can you apply it to even some pure pleasure or enjoyment readings, or yeah, I can also see the difference between the reading for being distracted or for distraction, like you would watch Netflix, even though you could watch Netflix on purpose, but that's another thing, versus reading on purpose with a clear direction that you set yourself before reading the book and before attacking those pages, and trying to grasp those why statements from, or those biographical information from the author. I can really see that, and I'm definitely gonna try to apply it in the next few weeks. Thank you for that. But I have a question then about that. It applies to your reading, to your readings, but to everything else. Do you do? Does it happen to you, or do you sometimes do things without purpose? Does it still happen, or are you a robot already? I mean, I'm just kidding, but I'm sure you understood my question, and yeah, that's a bit of my question about that one thing, underlying principle. Yeah.
So the great thing is, I'm a human being. I'm not a robot. And yes, there are things that happen where I actually will go, why did I do that? Well, I got stuck in a rut of doing things. And one thing that's very fortunate with myself as a one thing coach and as a life coach, I'm always inside my head, subconsciously and consciously, I'm always asking questions. And that I've built up almost as a habit, always asking questions. And sometimes it's not out loud. Sometimes it's just in my head. And one of the big questions that I'm always asking is, what I'm doing now, is it putting me on track to achieve my goal? So what am I doing now? Is it putting me on track to achieve my goal? So for instance, if I get down and I'm suddenly just, you turn the television on and Netflix comes on and you just start binge watching something, I'll sit there and I'll go, is this helping me to get my goal or pushing me away? And I'll look at it and I'll go, hey, wait a minute, this is actually, it's blowing 2 hours of my day. So then I'll get up, consciously I'll get up and I'll try and do something productive to put myself back on track. So yes, I am a human being. There are things that are done without purpose. But while I'm doing the activities, I'm always asking myself, what I'm doing, is it putting me on track to achieve my goal? And for most people, when they understand goal, they always think of a goal as a monetary goal or this long-term goal. No, there could be a simple goal of making a cup of tea, by the way. Maybe it's making a salad for dinner. And that is it's a milestone goal, but leads onto a much bigger goal. And that's how I get everything into that alignment. So yes, with the one thing, it has now started to ingrain inside of me to start what we refer to as lining up all the dominoes, having everything onto that straight path, looking for the smallest activity and starting with that. It's a big priority, but starting with that, knocking it down so that it will knock down the next and the next and the next, so that I'm getting onto that achievement. And that gives me this purpose when I'm going through. But I am human. And there are things that happen without thought. And I will question myself. And hey, take it as a learning curve.
Yeah, sure. No, I fully understand what you mean, but I think I mean, it might be a little bit unclear yet, but I think I have a more of a philosophical question, even though it can also be really practical, and it needs to be. But it's a little bit more abstract, and I will try to be clear, even though it's not really clear in my head. But the question is about challenging one way of seeing or understanding yourself, or your purpose, or who you are. And in my head, there are two hypotheses, two perspectives that come up and that don't go together pretty nicely, or that are partly contradictory. It's the difference between, I'm going to explain it a little bit longer afterwards, but it's the difference between, I'm questioning the difference between being who you are as a core understanding or a core philosophy of your life, on a broad scale, versus becoming who you are. So what I'm questioning is, I can fully understand that the one thing, your perspective on life, your philosophy on life, on the personal level as well as on the business level, is really deeply linked to chasing your future self, to becoming who you are by setting yourself goals and always becoming a little bit more about who you are, if you understand me well. And I think it's also, my question is also a little bit an image of a clash between two culture or two philosophies, maybe a little bit more French or European philosophy and a more Anglo-Saxon philosophy of life. And both are really interesting. And I've been studying a little bit both throughout my life. But yeah, I struggle a little bit to how to formulate it clearly as a question. But I would say it like this: why do you trust, or do you fund all your life, on a personal as well as on a business level, on that particular idea or principle that the goal in life is to become, weeks after weeks, days after weeks, goals after goals, a little bit more who you are? And that's the joy of life, the beauty of life. That's the purpose of life. And that's also where you're gonna find your own purpose. And why do you bet on that principle or on that strategy or philosophy, instead of betting of someone who could think like, okay, the goal is to stay who I am as much as possible by erasing, I would say, even it's not the right word, but by not being distracted by all your past traumas or traumatic experiences, and as well by not being distracted by all your future fake dreams or wish or will. You understand?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what could you say about that? Yeah.
So this is, and it's such a great way that you bring it up, because when I assist people, I don't want to change people. That's like an underlying. I don't want people to change. What I want people is to be who they are, that internal person. So it's going down to that raw center. So when I look at individuals and they look at the person they are right now, okay, you were created by the past actions that you have already done. So all those activities in your past, that has created who you are right now. So, and just using this as a broad example, if you're a doctor, well, you studied medicine. You've gone through the practices of medicine. You've gone through that whole process to get to where you are right now. So you can't change that person standing right in front of me right now. You can't change it, because that is who you are. That is your history. All those activities, all those actions that you've done, whether they are good, whether they are bad, that has created the person that's standing right in front right now. So that individual, we can't change, cannot change. However, what happens with a lot of individuals is they feel ashamed of their past. They don't like to share it. So what do? When they go out into the world, they put a different persona on. Yeah. And when they put that different persona, people see them differently. Then what happens is they're trying to live like that persona. And ultimately, it can clash with their past of what they've done, all those activities. So when I look at an individual, I'm not trying to change the person. What I want to do is I want to make sure that they're living the true person, not creating a false in front of them. So when I go through in coaching, we talk about goals and visions of the future. What we're actually doing is we look back and we say, and really this is taking the question to a very deep level. What is the legacy that you want to leave in your life? What do you want to be remembered by? Yeah. That's really what the goals. That's when we take it down. But when we do that, it's very hard, because people have still got lots of life to live. They don't know what legacy they want to live. So if I started a coaching question, I said, Antoine, what legacy do you want to live? You can only reflect back on your past, or you can look at the persona of somebody else to say, that's what I want to do. So when we start looking at goals, ultimately what we're doing, these are milestones in life. And we always want to have this beacon that gives us guidance of where we're actually going towards. And it helps us so that we don't walk around aimlessly every single day. It's so that we've got purpose. We're heading in a certain direction. Do those goals change? Absolutely. They will change. New opportunities will open up. There will be challenges that will remove that goal from your future. That does happen. But if you don't have direction, if you don't have a goal that you're working towards, what will happen is every morning you will wake up and go, I actually don't know what to do today. So I want to be somebody else. And you're going to start putting on this other persona, and then you go into the work environment and you do your job. And then people see you in a certain way. But that's not true who you are. And when you start living like that, you start to conflict. Your outer world and your inner world, they start to conflict with each other. You become confused. And then when somebody sees the true you, they either like or dislike it. And that's when everything starts to fall apart. So when I work with clients, I don't change who they are. The past has already designed them. What I do is I help them to find that vision, find out what is that legacy that they want to live. but without asking those direct words, so that we can head in that particular direction. And as you go through life, as you become older, it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. And as I coach people in their 60s and even in their 70s, if I had to say to them, what is your goal? They just look at me like, I've done everything. But if I had to say to them, what is the legacy that you want to end your life with? And I know that sounds kind of raw, but when you pass on, what is that legacy that is going to be remembered? The emotion comes out. And they will then say, all right, so for the next 10 years, this is what I want to do. And that's when we start to actually identify it. So as you become older in life, a legacy that you want to leave becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. And yes, there are individuals at a young age that can see that legacy right up front. And those are unique individuals. And all I want to do is I want to help more and more people become unique individuals, so that they can see that. Because when you got the power of that legacy, the actions that you take going forward become so powerful. Your life is becoming meaningful because you're living what people are going to remember you by. So hopefully that answers your question,
Yeah,
in the roundest way that I could.
no, really. But have you thought of writing a book yourself?
Yes, so I'm actually in the process of writing a book. It's something that is going through it's based more on life coaching, but it's life journey, helping people to, and it's the step before the legacy, helping people to find their identity. Because if you don't know who you are, in other words, if you kind of have got amnesia of your past, you're kind of lost. So it's really to help people to find out who they are right now, because that is that foundation. And that's what I'm actually busy with. I've been busy with it for pretty much most of this year, research and putting it together. It's, for me, I'd set myself a guideline that it's a 3-year project. So it's not something that I'm just going to shut down and write. I'm actually going through the book, going through the processes. I'm speaking to individuals and I'm learning from people firsthand. You know, you can go on and you can Google everything, or you can go on to ChatGPT to find the answers. But I want to get that rawness by speaking to people and learning from them and putting it into practice, so that everybody will be able to identify themselves. And just when they stand up, they'll be able to say, I am, and this is who I am. This is what I do, with confidence. And it's so, and I've had it with so many people where I say, who are you? And I'll get silence. They're lost. They don't know who they are. They're doing something because they've put on this facade of somebody else. They want to live in somebody else's shoes. And I want them to come back to themselves so that they become the powerful person, identify what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and going forward. Because you look at anybody that's successful and you ask them the question, who are you? I'm going to say 9.5 times out of 10, they will give you a full 45-minute answer. And not to brag, they know who they are and where they've come from and why they are that type of person. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm in the process of doing all of that, and yeah, we'll see. I'm like nine months into it, and I will say it is a challenge. Writing is not easy for a person that does a lot of speaking.
Mm-hmm. As a spoiler, do you have a key principle that you have already think of, or around you're going to build your book around it?
Absolutely.
To share it, yeah.
Absolutely. So one of the key principles is identity. So that is one of the core, is to help people do it. But the big part of it is the simple truth of your identity. Mm. That is really bringing it out, because, you know, you can have complexities. And I've had people where they'll explain who they are, and at the end of it, you're going, okay, so who are you? I want to get it down so it becomes very simple, and it's the truth of your identity. So that's really where I'm basing it on, is when I ask people questions and they give me a complex answer, I rephrase the question. I'll go in from a different angle so that I can see, that's the simple truth of their identity. And that's really what I'm going through when I'm actually asking questions and writing the book. Everything must be a simple truth, an easy way of identifying who you are as a person. And it's not going to be for everybody. That's for sure, because some people are just going to say, I'm happy with who I am. Fantastic. And I'm 100% happy with that, because that leads me to know that you're ready on the path. You know who you are when you're comfortable where you are right now.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Stuart. Thank you. I mean, thank you so much for this conversation. It was really, again, a true pleasure for me to hear you, but especially to hear about all those underlying topics about yourself, South Africa as well, but also about spirituality and your take on those major or big, even unclear a little bit, but philosophical questions. No, thank you so much for taking the time today, and yeah, I'll be really, really, really happy to hear you again soon on the podcast, obviously, and in our coaching sessions. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, Antoine, and you have a fantastic week ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye now.